Let's take a look at some prototype Bionicle sets from the fan favorite MAHRI and BARRAKI waves of Bionicle. Some of these look super cool and they explore some really incredible things that I wish appeared in the official sets. Others are downright strange. One of them even uses hair. Yes, real textured furry hair. So stay tuned to see that one because it's a little odd. But let's dive in and see some of these awesome prototypes. Let's start things off with a prototype version of Nuparu who kind of looks nothing like Nuparu. You know, the colors are wrong, the look is super different, and I don't even know what the heck is going on with this torso design. But it is pretty cool to see those iconic claws, because Nuparu and Nika of course had those really cool Wolverine style claws, and it looks like they were continuing to explore that here on his MAHRI version, which would have been nice. I actually would have liked to have seen those in the final set. But yeah, going back to that torso design, it's just a big hollow ring with a giant blaster in the center, and sure, that does look kinda cool, but it's not really something I would expect to see on a noble heroic Toa. Feels like something you would probably more so see on a bad guy, so it kinda makes sense that they removed that, I guess. But I at least like that they were playing with ideas. A blaster in the center of the torso is interesting, just maybe not like that. I do love this mask as well, getting a yellow Rakshi head, and then kind of cutting out the bottom bits here of Vakama's mask and smushing the two together. It's actually quite a nice combination of pieces. Of course, it's non-purist, so you'd have to cut up pieces if you wanted to recreate that, but it still looks pretty cool. Now we have one more image of Nuparu MAHRI, and this once again looks nothing like him, but I do really thoroughly enjoy this concept. A big old scuba suit with a large dome-like thing on the top of the head, so they look like they're kind of like a, you know, classic underwater diver, or I don't know, this has some more like kind of sci-fi vibes to it, so it's sort of updating an older concept, I guess. But that would have been a really cool aesthetic for the Toa MAHRI if they all had these huge scuba suits. I mean, on the final sets, they all just had these small breathing tubes coming out of their mask, and that was basically enough to showcase that they were underwater, and yeah, maybe that more subtle approach was a better move, but seeing them explore options like this, it's really neat. Although I don't particularly know why Nuparu needs to have those breathing helmet things on his feet. That was a bit of a strange choice, but yeah, okay. It is cool to see these white Vizon masks here on the arms. They are slightly cut and modified a little bit, but it does look good for a shoulder design. I guess they maybe moved that from Nuparu over to Maxilos because he had basically the same thing but with different colors. But hey, something that's cool about this, it'd be relatively easy to make something that looks fairly similar with existing pieces. Just get a few different windscreen pieces or domed elements and you could probably recreate something like this. We do have one more prototype for Nuparu MAHRI, and this one's a lot closer to the final version, but we can see some differences on the mask here. This one's a lot more smooth, and it lacks some of the interesting like depth and details that the final one has. And yeah, I'm glad that they put those cutouts in the top of the mask. The fact that you can see some of the translight blue peeking in from underneath, I always thought that was a really nice choice. And it makes it feel more underwater and like a scuba diver of sorts. Oh, actually, the arms and the torso, they are a little bit different to the final version, aren't they? They have a similar energy, but they are using different pieces. That's kind of cool. Now, we've got a prototype for Motoro MAHRI. These images show him with some blue ammo inside of his blaster, and yeah, I kind of love that. It actually works quite well, especially for Motoro. You know, it'd be cool if all of the different Toa MAHRI had different colored blaster ammo inside their blasters. I don't know how easy that would have been for LEGO to do. Maybe it was just a lot cheaper to mass produce them in red instead of having them all be different colors, but that would have been a cool idea. If that's what they were doing. I don't know, that might just be an error in this image, who knows. Now, additionally, some other images showcase Motoro with transparent blue limbs. The final set did away with any sort of transparent colors, but if we look back on his Anika form, of course, he did have those same transparent limbs. So I wonder why they decided to remove those. It would have been a nice way to kind of bridge the character between both of his versions. But yeah, still, the final version looks great as it looked. It's not like it needed that there, but they were certainly considering it at one point. We also have an image here from some sort of toy showcase or toy expo where it appears that Motoro had a 3D printed mask on, or I don't know, maybe it was just made of some other material because the final like ABS plastic version, maybe it wasn't quite ready yet for this showcase. And then we've got a pretty similar situation here with Huki MAHRI. The mask is basically the same, but slightly different types of plastic quality. Now, one of my favorite prototype images here showcases Kongu MAHRI. Here's how he looked originally, and here he is in the prototype. Unfortunately, we only have one image of him here, so we can't really get a good look at his different mask and how he looks as a Toa, but we can see this cool black scuba craft. You know, it looks like the Bionicle would hold onto it and they would swim faster at faster speeds because maybe there's some like jet propulsion going on. Man, I love that. I wish we'd seen that in some of the final sets. It does look like this piece was maybe the canister lid on top of like an early canister design. Well, I'm guessing it was anyway. To me, it seems a bit unlikely likely that that piece would actually fit inside another canister. It looks like it's just a bit too big, and it kind of looks like it could fit on top of a canister, right? It could be the lid. But if that was the case, I guess that's maybe the reason why they did away with this idea. Because, you know, that feels like a very important piece for play. It offers the set a very unique accessory, or I guess you could say it's a weapon, however you want to word it. I don't know if this maybe had some like firing mechanism as well, it's hard to say. And so, you know, maybe if this was a canister lid, LEGO said, well, if that's such a key component for play, potentially the canister itself could get damaged, and then if a kid buys it, they've got an already damaged LEGO piece, which we don't really want. Plus, I'm sure there's some kids who just blindly threw out their canisters and then, you know, built the set, and then afterwards were like, oh, I actually need that to play with it. So because of those reasons, they're like, yeah, let's not do that. Which I guess makes sense, but that would have been so cool. But you know, the final Toa MAHRI canisters did still have some level of play to them. They could be converted into this sort of little mounted turret wall thing. I don't really know what you'd call that. But like you can see here, they're really just placing the blaster that already came on the set on top of the canister. If you didn't have the canister, you can still very effectively play with the toy. This maybe wouldn't have been the case. Now, while we're talking about canisters, here's some early exploration for some of the MAHRI Toa canisters. I freaking love this. Look at the way that the Bionicle logo is broken up, and these orange tentacles are breaking everything apart and trying to like swallow up the Toa. It feels so alive. There's so much energy. This is so exciting. It's really cool packaging. And the way that they've kept some of those white canister lids there, and if we actually flip the box over, we can see that there's a bit on the back here that says those canister lids in white can come off and then be put together. So, you know, they could be used for storage or whatever. Honestly, man, this is just freaking cool. Plus, it looks like we've got a bit of a prototype for Motoro on the box, and his mask looks very alien-like. It makes him look almost like a bad guy, not so much like the hero that he truly is. But I guess there's elements of the rough shape of this that were carried across into the final product. I also like that this shoulder design appears to be using some Borak windscreen pieces that are totally silver. That's an interesting idea for a shoulder design. You could actually just as easily do that today with existing pieces. And of course, we can see that Motoro has those prototype transparent limbs once again. Now we got another canister prototype here, which shows us a design that looks like the Toa are, I guess, like trapped inside some sort of containment canister. You know, like it's filled up with water and you're looking at a specimen inside some scientific cage or canister or whatever. You know, I guess they wanted it to look like you're buying a Toa that's already swimming in water to really help sell the idea that this is an underwater theme. And I like that concept, but maybe it was a little bit too difficult to convey on the canister. Still, the final result did look pretty good. I'm happy with how they ended up. Now, the same concept appears to be explored a little bit further in what looks like some sort of store promotional display. We've got the different Barraki inside these water containers that look like they actually have water in them, and then it looks like you're staring up at some exotic creature in an aquarium. I love that. You know, I wonder what actually happened to these store displays. I'd love to own one of these if they still exist. I'm sure that water's a little bit gross if they still exist, but hey, you know, this would make for a really cool lamp. It looks like these actually do light up in some fashion. Imagine having it next to your bed, and you turn it on when it's nice and dark, it's midnight, you're staring at Prydac as you're falling to sleep. That'd be lovely. Creepy, but lovely. Let's move over to an older magazine advertisement now. So this has some unique stuff for the Barraki. We can see an early design for Elek's mask. The shape is similar, but different. We can see some larger yellow fangs going down the sides of the front of the mask there. And of course, there's a big old yellow bit on the front of the mask, which is certainly very different. I'm glad they removed that because honestly, I love how Elek's face looks, and I'm glad they didn't tamper with that too much. The final result is perfection. Takedox also has a slightly different mask. The older one appears to be lacking a chin. So it was a good idea to add a chin. It just makes sense. And now you might have noticed it in some of these last few images, but the squid launcher was once very different. So let's get a better look at it here in this image. This image also showcases Takedox's older mask as well. So there you go, another good look at that. Anyway, so the squid launcher, we got these two big holes, which I imagine you're meant to put two human fingers into, and then it allows you to really easily grip the squid launcher and you can launch the squid off of it with a bit more ease. I kind of like that. Yeah, plus it looks quite similar to Kongu's vehicle that we saw before. I imagine these are supposed to have some kind of like jet propulsion. The Barraki can hold onto it and jet off faster underwater. I also like the fact that the squid can be stored onto this blaster, because in the final sets they're just stored on the bodies of the Barraki. It does make more sense to put it on the weapon instead of the bodies. We have a proto for Karapar now, and it appears that they were maybe considering having his armor be purely Keytorange instead of the unique coloration that we see on the final set. Well, maybe that was the case. This could just be like a rendering issue and they weren't able to recreate the exact look look in this digital render. I mean, you know, you look at the head here, that looks a bit more similar to the final product. So, I don't know, who knows? Maybe they were doing that, maybe not. But the weapons are different here on Karapar. We can see that he did not have that cool crab claw on one hand, instead they were split apart across two hands. A little bit different. Now we got another version of Alec which shows him with red eyes instead of blue ones, so maybe they were tossing up what color to make that at one point. We also have these renders of the Barraki, which show a few interesting differences. Mantax has a very different weapon. Originally it looks like it was just one big piece, but later they altered it and made it two separate pieces. Maybe this older version was too big of a piece, and changing it to two smaller pieces, well, it allowed them to use it elsewhere in other sets. And you know, anytime LEGO can make a piece that they can then use multiple times, it makes it far more profitable for them to make a brand new piece, because you know, if you spend what is a lot of money to buy a LEGO mold to produce that piece and then you only put it in one set, it's a little bit less profitable, right? But if you spread it across multiple sets, it makes that purchase a little bit more worthwhile. So maybe that was the logic there. Hard to say, but that's just me guessing. Then we got this render of Pridak here, which shows him with a slightly different version of his feet. The older version, they're a little bit more pointed and triangular, whereas the final version, he has almost these kind of toes on the edge of his feet. Again, maybe this change was made for the same reasons I mentioned before, because Kazani used those same foot pieces, and the way that they end, it gives him more of a pronounced mouth or little kind of teeth at the front of his jaw. So again, maybe it made it more appropriate so that you could use it across multiple sets and made it more profitable and more reasonable to produce. And hey, given that Mantax's weapon also appeared in Kazani's set, I might be onto something, or I might be totally wrong, who knows. And finally, if we look at Kalmar here, he has slightly different feet. The final version had these smaller additions on the sides there, but there are a few different images here of Kalmar at different stages in development. His squid launcher changes, as you can see, where his feet are the older version and not the newer version. Interesting. A few more proto images of Kalmar now. We can see an early version of his mask design and an early version of the tentacle piece. This kind of looks like it's just a trans-orange version of the tubing elements that we saw on the other Toa Mahri, and I'm glad they changed that up. The final piece was a lot cooler. And yeah, this old mask is super creepy, but I do love how they use some of those black Lego snakes to convey the tentacles on the back of the head. I like that. Now, one more prototype image for Kalmar. It shows a slightly different mask with a lot more red and a lot less black, and some longer facial stuff at the bottom of the face. Also, what's up with this squid launcher? It looks like it's just a heap of spikes or something. It's certainly unique. Then we got another prototype Barraki here. It's cool to see that they were really thinking about unique body shapes here, which we certainly saw carried over into the final sets. And then we got one more prototype of Pridak, and this is definitely earlier on in the testing and development stages. Take a look at Pridak's feet pieces here. You know, one side we can see them experimenting with how they're going to make the piece look. The other side, it's just two Liwa Nuva blades. So I imagine what happened is the designer was like, hey, I want the feet to look a little bit like this rough shape. And they took it to the New Elements part designer and they're like, do you think you could build that but have it look a little bit more shark-like or a little bit more underwater-like? And they said, say no more. And they made something a little bit like this. So it's interesting to see what could have been the design process there of how the different departments ended up developing that final piece. And finally, the one I mentioned at the start of the video, this is that freaky weird prototype with fur or hair on it. I mean, I guess it gives it an interesting beard design, but dude, this looks so whack. It's so strange to see a Bionicle with hair on it, and it's a very, very different face design. I mean, I kind of like it, but could you imagine if they went through with this for a final set and we actually had a Bionicle with facial hair? That'd be so weird, hey? Now, sadly, we don't really know who this character is. It's just described as an unknown prototype model. But it's always cool to see the wacky, strange, and weird ideas that they were tossing around. So there you go. Those are the 2007 prototypes for the underwater Mahri and Barraki waves. Which one of these did you like the most? And did any of these inspire you to build your own unique LEGO creation? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Happy building, and bye for now.